Good morning. I'm Pastor Adam Gray. I'm one of the pastors here at Circle of Faith, and I add my word of welcome to Pastor Courtney, and I also add prayer requests. A couple of our musicians are not able to be here for medical reasons this morning, which is one of the reasons you see me running back and forth across the stage this morning. So prayers for Carlton and Tori and Kat, who all have various health things going on this morning. So today is really interesting. We continue our Lenten series on this society of God, on what it means to be part of the kingdom of God. And today, I have this object lesson on the table that I want us to remember throughout service. I have flour, sugar, and water. And if you can't see them on the stream, I'm going to pick them up so you can see. On the table, I have flour, I have sugar, and I have water. Now, there's a fourth thing on the table, and it's bread. And I have a question for you. Flour, sugar, and water is actually all you need to make bread. But how long will it sit here on the table if no one comes and does anything with it before it's bread? Forever, right? It will never be bread unless someone takes action. Even though all of the ingredients are here for delicious quick bread, it will never become what it's intended to be unless it undergoes a transformation. And that transformation is a transformation of intention where someone comes and transforms it. And I just want you to think in today's lesson, in the sermon, and everything we do for the rest of worship today, I want you to think about how the ingredients are not bread, but the ingredients with transformation have the opportunity to become something life-giving, nourishing, delicious, and wonderful. So as I was thinking this week of how to begin the sermon, I remembered a young woman that I met at the Baptist Collegiate Ministry in my first year of college. Her name was April, I think. And April and I, we'll call her April because that's as close to the name as I can remember. She came in the building of the Baptist Collegiate Ministry on the Florida State campus a few times, and I was coming in and out, and we had 2 or 3 really good conversations. Just sitting on the couches at the BCM talking about life. She was a freshman. She played flute in the Marching Chiefs, which is the marching band of Florida State University. Great marching band. And if you're in the Marching Chiefs, you're really, really busy. It kind of takes up your whole life. You have time to go to school and be in the Marching Chiefs, and that's about it. And so I had 2 or 3 conversations with April, and they were really good conversations. We seemed to get each other. We came from backgrounds where we could understand, and we had some really good conversations about life and about spiritual things, about our hope for the future, but I didn't get her number. She didn't get my number. She had a boyfriend. I had a girlfriend. We didn't really have time for just like more friends in our lives because I was busy with church things and she was busy with marching bands things. And after about 3 conversations, I never saw her again. I didn't even get enough information about her to look her up later on Facebook, and I don't even actually know if April is her name. That's just like what I have left in my brain. It could be a couple of other things. And all of the ingredients were there for a friendship. All of the ingredients were there for a real kind of transformation of acquaintance into something else. But because neither of us ever did anything with those ingredients, the opportunity passed us by, and they continued to be a lot like flour, sugar, and water on the table, and nothing like bread. And I think that if we kind of think about our lives, there are a lot of things in our lives where all of the ingredients are there to make something new, to make something wonderful, to make something better. But for one reason or another, sometimes it's like emotional stuff holding us back. Sometimes it's just time. We're busy. But maybe there's an instrument sitting in your house that you've never learned how to play. Maybe there's a book on your shelf that you've always wanted to read. Maybe there's a person in your life that you've always wanted to make that relationship better. Maybe there's someone in your life that you've always wanted to like go back and try again with a connection. But for one reason or another, the ingredients are still sitting on the shelf. We haven't done anything with them yet. And I want you to feel there's some real positive emotion around that, and there's some real negative emotion around that, right? There's this positive emotion of potential, of what those things could be. And there's this real negative emotion of kind of a loss in advance, a nostalgia maybe, or a longing for what could have been and isn't yet. And Jesus says that this is our engagement with the kingdom of God, with the society of God, with this reign of God. That we feel the coming of something much better than what has ever been before. But we also feel the pain, the loss, the nostalgia for the fact that it's not quite like it should be yet. And into this tension between already and not yet, between ingredients and transformation, Jesus speaks this parable in the 13th chapter of Matthew. Matthew chapter 13, verses 33 and following. Jesus spoke again with this parable. The kingdom of heaven, again, we've talked about this being the society of God, the society of heaven, the reign of God, the organization of God. Jesus is talking about the way that all of us relate to all the others of us and the way we organize society, our relationships to God and each other, the organization of all things, the society of God. The society of God, the kingdom of heaven, is like the yeast a woman used in making bread. Even though she only put a little yeast in 3 measures of flour, it permeated every part of the dough. Yeast is amazing. Yeast, these little tiny organisms that change sugars into carbon dioxide and other things. This is what makes bread fluffy and yeasty, that taste and, well, yummy. And it is interesting here that Jesus could have said that the kingdom of heaven is like the woman who bakes the bread. And we could understand that approach, right? That's something that could have been led to here, that the kingdom of heaven is like the woman who takes all of these ingredients and puts them together and makes something new. And that would actually be a fairly satisfying conclusion to the sermon in the way that we think as Western individualized people. But that's actually not what Jesus says. Jesus says that the kingdom of heaven, the society of God, is like the yeast. Thousands and thousands of little organisms working together to make something new. There's this Greek word that is zume, which is like leaven or yeast, or it refers figuratively to this hidden action that creates transformation. And that's what yeast is. Yeast, you don't see it. You only see its effects. One little particle of yeast, we actually have yeast kind of floating around in the air by themselves at all time. In fact, if you've seen the make your own bread starter, make your own sourdough starter, make your own Amish friendship bread. If you've seen those kind of things during the pandemic, which is what some people have done with their extra time when they've been trapped at home, you see that you can actually leave a bowl of sugar and water with a little bit of flour outside, and yeast will come live in it, and you can make your own sourdough starter. Yeast is all around us, but it doesn't actually do the transformative work of turning water, flour, and sugar into yummy, yummy bread until a lot of it gets together. The kingdom of heaven is not about top-down work. The society of God is about bottom-up work. It's not the woman, but it's the yeast. That all of us doing the little bit of work that we need to do to transform the little pieces of our lives and families and selves and churches and relationships, all together bubbles up into a rising bread that is something different than it was before. Those of you who are spiritually mature or have been in church a long time have probably beaten me to the point of this already. That if we want to participate in the kingdom of God, our job is not to be the flour and just get worked. Our job is not to be the water that just gets poured in and you never see it again. Our job is certainly not to be God who causes all things to be created. But in this parable, we're the yeast that does the hand-over-hand work of creating the little transformations around us that cause what was before just to be these separate ingredients to together become something they weren't before. And this is the heart of Circle of Faith. In this room today, I won't point y'all out because y'all know who you are as I say each of these categories. We have young people and old people. We have people who are black and people who are white. We have people who are gay and people who are straight. We have people with PhDs and people who barely graduated from high school. We have all of those people in the room together. And most places in our society, they would not mix. Just like the flour sitting over here and the water sitting over here are not spontaneously going to turn into dough unless someone puts them together. But each of us, from our social locations, doing the work of yeast can create a little transformation around us, can make a little connection that we wouldn't have otherwise made, could make a little transformation where relationships that would not have happened before start to happen, and suddenly we have something that is very different than anything you can find out in the world. We have something yummy and delicious to present to the people around us. Yes, even the gospel, the good news that the people who are once separated can now be together. The people who once did not have an identity now have an identity together. The people who were once orphans are now children of God. We can be changed. But it takes all of us, doesn't it? Adam standing up here by himself is not good enough to make the change. Because you can work water and sugar and flour together all you want, and you'll make a dough, but what you'll end up with is unleavened bread. You'll get a cracker. And crackers are fine, but we all know that yummy, warm, fluffy sourdough loaves are better. One person can make a cracker, but only all of us together can make something delicious. So I want us today to catch the vision of what Jesus is talking about. This society of God with a potential for all of our relationships to be changed. For love to abound where there was only once disconnection. In this potential, we see something beautiful. Because friends and siblings, children of God, I'll just be honest with you, so often out in the world, people's engagement with Christianity, when they see Christians, they see division. When people see Christians, they see people who are engaged in an us versus them mentality, a division. And my heart, what I believe is the heart of the society of God, is that we do this transformational, unexpected, delicious connection so often, so regularly, so much a part of who we are. Just like when you put yeast into a dough, it cannot help but leaven the dough. That's what it does every time, because that's what yeast is. Will we become the people that create transformational connections of love everywhere we go, in everything we do, because that's who we are and we can't help it? Where we are not seen any longer as a people of division, but we are seen as a people of connection and love. Jesus said, on the very last night he was here on earth, one new commandment I give to you. Because we remember that Jesus was a Jewish man in a Jewish area speaking to Jewish people about the Jewish law. And so everything else Jesus said can be seen as a commentary on the Mosaic law. That's why the Hebrew Scriptures and the New Testament are so important to us, because you cannot understand what Jesus was saying without understanding what Moses and the prophets said. But Jesus says one new commandment. I'm going to add one thing. One new commandment I give to you. Love one another as I have loved you. By this, everyone will know that you are following me, by your love one for another. I'm going to invite Pastor Courtney